Have you ever watched a flower struggle to break through concrete? Most would say the concrete is too strong, too unyielding for something so delicate. But that flower, that simple, determined life force, doesn't know it's supposed to fail. It doesn't recognize the impossible. It simply persists until the impossible gives way. I've spent my life watching people build their own concrete prisons and then wonder why they cannot grow. Today, I'm going to share with you the truth that shattered my own limitations. A truth that the ancient philosophers understood thousands of years before I was born. The superior man is distressed by his lack of ability, not paralyzed by it, not defined by it, distressed by it. That distress, that divine discontent, is the seed of all greatness. But be warned, what I'm about to share with you isn't comfortable. It isn't packaged in pretty affirmations or feel-good platitudes. I remember the first time I truly understood this principle. I was 16 years old, training until my knuckles bled against a wooden dummy, hour after hour, day after day. My techniques were sharp, my speed impressive. My master would nod with approval as I demonstrated form after perfect form. But something felt empty. I could feel it, a void beneath all that technical proficiency. One evening after everyone had left, I caught myself in the mirror mid-motion. What I saw stopped me cold. Behind all that skill was a boy hiding behind technique, hiding behind discipline, hiding behind the safety of what he already knew he could do well. In that moment, I realized the most dangerous opponent I would ever face wasn't across from me. It was staring back at me in that mirror. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That moment when you realize your greatest enemy isn't the world outside, it's the voice inside that whispers, "You've done enough, you're good enough, stay comfortable, stay safe." That voice sounds like a friend, but it's the assassin of your potential. The superior man isn't distressed because he's failing. He's distressed because he knows he could be more. He could give more. He could transcend what he is today and become something greater tomorrow. This distress isn't weakness. It's the highest form of self-awareness. It's the tension between what is and what could be. Without that tension, without that distress, there is no transcendence. Society has taught you to run from discomfort, hasn't it? To seek constant validation, to measure your worth through external achievements and the approval of others. Your social media feeds flood you with highlights of others' lives, while you sit questioning your own path. Your education taught you to pass tests, but not to test limits. Your culture celebrates comfort over challenge, and in this pursuit of comfort, you've forgotten the essential truth. The capacity that makes us human isn't our ability to avoid pain. It's our ability to move toward it with purpose, to be distressed by our limitations and to use that distress as fuel, not as an excuse to shrink, but as a reason to expand. When I came to America, I was met with closed doors and rigid thinking. You cannot teach non-Chinese people. You cannot blend different fighting styles. You cannot question the traditional ways. Each cannot was a piece of concrete trying to contain my growth. Each limitation was an invitation to surrender to what was, instead of creating what could be. But here's what most people never understand. Those limitations weren't obstacles. They were opportunities. Each no was a challenge asking, how much do you want this? How creative can you become? How deeply can you believe in your own path? The superior man doesn't curse the darkness of his limitations. He lights a fire with the distress they cause him. Let me share something I've never spoken about publicly. There were nights when I would lie awake, my mind racing with doubt. Moments when the weight of my ambitions crushed against the reality of my circumstances. Times when I questioned everything, my abilities, my decisions, my worth. But I came to understand that these dark nights weren't my weakness showing. They were my strength being forged, like a sword that must pass through fire to find its true strength. Your character must endure the heat of self-doubt to discover its true potential. The difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary isn't the absence of distress, it's what you do with it. Think about water for a moment. When contained in a teacup, it becomes the teacup. When contained in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. Water doesn't fight these limitations, it adapts to them while never forgetting its essential nature. Its power isn't in resistance, but in persistence. It doesn't battle the rock in its path, It flows around it, over it, through it, patiently, consistently transforming the unchangeable through its unwavering nature. Your distress about your limitations must be like water, not a destructive force that drowns you in despair, but a creative force that carves new paths toward your potential. Most people misunderstand what it means to be distressed by one's limitations. They think it means dwelling in frustration or beating yourself up for what you cannot do. This is ego masquerading as growth. True distress isn't about self-punishment. It's about honest self-assessment. It's the ability to look at yourself without delusion, without excuses, and say, this is where I am. This is where I could be. The gap between these 2 points isn't my shame. It's my responsibility. The superior man doesn't use his limitations as a reason to feel inferior. He uses them as a map for growth. I remember sparring with a senior student when I was young. He was bigger, stronger, more experienced. For weeks, he dominated every exchange. My instinct was to avoid him, to protect my pride by fighting those I knew I could beat. But something inside wouldn't let me take the easy path. The distress I felt at being outmatched became my greatest teacher. I began watching his movements like a scientist, studying the energy patterns, finding the microscopic gaps in his defense. I didn't just train harder, I trained differently. I didn't just work on my weaknesses, I reimagined what was possible. And the day came when I no longer saw him as an opponent to be feared, but as a challenge to be met. Your limitations are not your enemies. They are your most honest teachers. Look around you. The world is full of people who have made peace with their limitations, who have decided that good enough is good enough, who have traded the divine distress of growth for the temporary comfort of complacency. They are dying a slow death, not of the body, but of the spirit. With each compromise, with each surrender to I can't, a piece of their humanity fades. Don't join them in this living death. Embrace the distress that comes from knowing you are meant for more. Let it be the fire that burns away everything that isn't your highest self. When I developed Jeet Kune Do, people thought I was simply creating another style of fighting. But I wasn't interested in adding to the confusion. I was interested in stripping away the unnecessary to reveal the essential. Your journey isn't about accumulating more techniques or strategies or achievements. It's about removing everything that blocks your authentic expression. The superior man's distress comes from recognizing all the ways he has become trapped in forms, limited by concepts, separated from his essential nature. His growth isn't measured by what he gains, but by what he releases. Consider the bamboo. In a hurricane, the mighty oak tries to stand unmoved. It resists until the pressure becomes too great, and then it breaks. But the bamboo, it bends, it adapts, it moves with the wind rather than against it. And when the storm passes, it remains standing. Your relationship with your limitations must be like this. Don't stand rigid against them, declaring war on what you cannot yet do. Bend with them, understand them, use their energy rather than fighting it. The superior man knows that true strength isn't found in rigidity, but in resilience. I want you to understand something crucial about this distress we're discussing. Most people use their awareness of their limitations as evidence for why they cannot succeed. I'm not strong enough. Becomes a reason to avoid the challenge rather than develop strength. And I don't have the connections. Becomes an excuse rather than a problem to solve. The superior man uses the exact same awareness as fuel for transformation. Same recognition, completely different response. This is the dividing line between those who fulfill their potential and those who merely dream about it. Let me share 3 principles that transformed my relationship with my own limitations. Principles that will allow you to turn distress into development. First, specificity. Vague awareness leads to vague action. Don't just acknowledge that you have room to grow. Identify exactly where, exactly how, exactly what is missing. Be scientific in your self-assessment. When I realized my kicks lacked power, I didn't just think I need to improve my kicks. I analyzed the precise mechanics, the hip rotation, the knee extension, the foot position. Your limitations are not general character flaws. They are specific skills or understandings that can be developed with focused intention. Second principle, incremental expansion. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but most people never take that step because they're too focused on the 1,000 miles. Your limitations weren't built in a day, and they won't be transformed in a day. The superior man doesn't try to leap across the chasm of his limitations, he builds a bridge across it, one plank at a time. When I wanted to increase my punching speed, I didn't immediately try to double it. I worked to be 1% faster each day. Sustainable growth isn't about dramatic transformations, it's about consistent micro-evolutions. Third principle, emotional mastery. Your limitations will trigger emotional responses: frustration, shame, anger, fear. These emotions aren't problems to be avoided, they're energies to be channeled. The superior man doesn't suppress the emotions that arise from his distress. He transforms them from obstacles into fuel. When I felt frustrated by a plateau in my training, I didn't try to push the feeling away. I recognized it, respected it, and then redirected its energy into creative problem solving. Your emotional response to your limitations is neither good nor bad. It's powerful. And power must be directed, not denied. Most people live their entire lives without ever testing the boundaries of what's possible for them. They accept the first limitation they encounter as if it were written in stone rather than sand. Mistake their current inability for permanent incapacity. Don't make this fatal error. Remember that your capabilities are not fixed. They're fluid. What you cannot do today has no bearing on what you might do tomorrow if you approach your limitations with the right mindset. The superior man knows that his capabilities are not inherited. They're cultivated. They're not discovered. They're developed. I've observed thousands of students over the years. The ones who transformed most profoundly weren't necessarily the most talented or the most privileged. They were the ones most distressed by the gap between their current reality and their potential. They were the ones who took that distress and transformed it from a burden into a blessing. They understood instinctively that comfort is the enemy of growth, that satisfaction is the end of progress. They embraced the discomfort of the gap because they knew that's where all evolution happens. Think about this. Every skill you now possess was once beyond your ability. Every understanding you now have was once beyond your comprehension. Every strength you now embody, once just potential, waiting to be developed. What separates what you can do now from what you couldn't do then? Your willingness to be distressed. Your lack of ability long enough to do something about it, not to deny it, not to excuse it, not to rationalize it, but to transform it through persistent, intelligent action. The superior man understands that his future abilities exist in the present moment as seeds waiting to be nurtured. There's a dangerous idea in modern society that you should simply accept yourself as you are. This sounds compassionate, but it's often just complacency dressed as wisdom. True self-acceptance isn't about ignoring your limitations. It's about acknowledging them without being defined by them. It's about loving yourself enough to demand more from yourself. The superior man accepts himself completely in the present moment while simultaneously working to transcend that present self. This isn't contradiction. It's the paradox at the heart of all human growth. I want to address something important. There's a profound difference between being distressed by your limitations and being destroyed by them. One leads to growth, the other leads to paralysis. The difference lies in how you frame the gap between where you are and where you could be. If you see it as evidence of your unworthiness, you'll be crushed by it. If you see it as an invitation to evolve, you'll be energized by it. The superior man doesn't use his limitations as a reason to punish himself. He uses them as a map for his growth. His distress isn't self-loathing, it's self-honesty married to self-belief. Let me share a story that illustrates this principle. When I first began teaching martial arts in America, I struggled with the English language. My inability to articulate certain concepts frustrated me deeply. I could feel the gap between what I wanted to express and what I could express. Many in my position would have retreated, teaching only physical techniques and avoiding philosophical discussions. But that distress I felt, that awareness of my limitation, became my motivation to study language with the same intensity I studied martial arts. I didn't just accept the limitation, I declared war on it. And gradually, word by word, concept by concept, I expanded my ability to communicate, not by denying my limitation, but by using it as a guide for where I needed to grow. Most people approach their limitations with either denial or despair. either pretend the limitations don't exist, or they allow themselves to be crushed by them. Both responses stem from the same root: fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of the work required to change, fear of facing the truth about where you actually are versus where you think you should be. The superior man approaches his limitations with a different energy entirely. Determination, he sees them clearly, feels the distress they cause, and channels that distress into decisive action, not frantic action, not desperate action, deliberate, focused, consistent action. Consider how water overcomes obstacles. It doesn't attack them head-on with brute force. It doesn't avoid them entirely. It finds the path of least resistance while maintaining its essential forward momentum. It adapts its shape without losing its substance. It permeates what seems impermeable through persistent, gentle pressure rather than dramatic force. Your approach to your limitations must have this water-like quality: fluid but unstoppable, adaptive, but uncompromising in your forward progress. Don't try to break through your limitations with force alone. Find the natural pathways for your growth. Here's a truth. Most motivational speakers won't tell you. Sometimes the distress of facing your limitations will feel unbearable. There will be moments when you want to retreat to comfortable illusions or familiar inadequacies. Moments when the gap between what you are and what you could be feels too vast to bridge. These moments aren't failures of your journey. They're essential parts of it. The superior man doesn't expect the path of growth to be comfortable or linear. He knows that transformation requires death, the death of old identities, old beliefs, old patterns, and death is rarely comfortable. Embrace these difficult moments as evidence that real change is occurring. I've noticed that many people use their limitations as a form of protection. "I can't speak in public" becomes a shield against the vulnerability of being seen. "I'm not a creative person" becomes armor against the risk of creating something that might be judged. "I don't understand technology" becomes a barrier against having to engage with a changing world. Your limitations may feel safe because they're familiar, because they lower expectations, because they give you reasons to avoid risks. But this safety is an illusion, and the price you pay for it is your potential. The superior man understands that the discomfort of growth is always less painful than the quiet desperation of knowing you're capable of more. Let me be clear about something. Being distressed by your limitations doesn't mean living in a constant state of dissatisfaction or self-criticism. It means developing the capacity to hold two truths simultaneously: appreciation for how far you've come, awareness of how far you could go. It's not about punishing yourself for what you lack. It's about honoring yourself enough to keep evolving. The superior man doesn't use his distress as evidence against himself. He uses it as information for his next evolution. His self-awareness isn't a weapon for self-attack, but a tool for self-transformation. I want to share 4 specific practices that will help you transform the distress of your limitations into the engine of your growth. First, the inventory of incompetence. Once a week, write down 3 specific abilities you lack that are limiting your progress. Not personality traits, not character flaws, specific capabilities you can develop through practice. Be ruthlessly honest, but not judgmental. This isn't about shame, it's about clarity. You cannot transform what you do not acknowledge. Second practice, the incremental challenge. For each limitation you identify, design a challenge that stretches you slightly beyond your current capacity. Not so far that you're certain to fail, but far enough that success isn't guaranteed. If public speaking terrifies you, don't start by giving a TED talk, start by speaking up in a small meeting. Remember, the gap between your current ability and your potential is crossed one step at a time, not in a single leap. Third practice, the reflection ritual. After each attempt to expand beyond a limitation, take time to reflect on 3 questions. What worked? What didn't work? What will I adjust next time? Don't just have experiences, extract the lessons from them. The superior man doesn't just act, he learns from his actions. This reflection isn't about judging your performance, it's about refining your approach. Fourth practice, the celebration of expansion. Each time you push beyond a previous limitation, acknowledge it. Not with empty self-congratulation, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing you're honoring your potential. This isn't about feeding your ego. It's about reinforcing the truth that your limitations are temporary conditions, not permanent identities. Celebrating your growth reminds you that what seems impossible today may be achievable tomorrow. Most people never discover their true capacity because they're too comfortable where they are, or too afraid of what they might find if they venture beyond it. They settle into routines that confirm what they already believe about themselves rather than challenging those beliefs. They surround themselves with people who reinforce their limitations rather than those who expand their vision. The superior man creates conditions that make growth inevitable. He puts himself in environments where his limitations will be exposed, but where he'll also have the support to transcend them. Don't hide from what makes you uncomfortable. Seek it out as the most direct path to your expansion. Here's a truth about limitations that few understand. They're contextual, not absolute. What limits you in one environment may empower you in another. What appears as weakness in one situation may be strength in a different one. When I was developing my fighting style, I was criticized for my relatively small frame compared to other martial artists. But what seemed like a limitation forced me to develop speed and precision that became my greatest advantages. The superior man doesn't just try to overcome his limitations, he seeks to transform them into specialized capabilities. Your supposed weaknesses, when fully understood and properly directed, can become your most distinctive strengths. There's something I need you to understand about this journey we're discussing. The goal isn't to eliminate all limitations. That's impossible. The human experience is defined by limits. Limits of time, of knowledge, of capacity. The goal is to establish a relationship with your limitations that empowers rather than diminishes you. To see them not as walls that confine you, but as horizons that orient you. The superior man isn't superior because he has no limitations. He's superior because he uses his awareness of his limitations as a compass for his growth, rather than a constraint on his potential. Most people think power comes from hiding weaknesses or denying limitations. They create elaborate facades of competence, pretending to know more than they do, to be more than they are. But true power, the kind that sustains rather than depletes, comes from radical honesty about where you are combined with unshakable faith in where you can go. The superior man doesn't need to pretend because he's not attached to appearing perfect. He's committed to becoming more complete. His strength isn't in the image he projects, but in the reality he's creating through his willingness to face and transform his limitations. I want to address the voice you're hearing right now. Not my voice, but the one inside your head that's been commenting on everything I've said. It might be saying, "This sounds good, but it doesn't apply to my specific situation," or "I've tried to change before and failed," or even, "Who does he think he is to tell me about my potential?" Listen carefully to this voice. The same one that has convinced you to accept limitations that were never truly yours. It's the voice that transforms temporary obstacles into permanent identities. The superior man doesn't silence this voice. He recognizes it, questions it, and refuses to let it have the final word on what's possible for him. Let me share something profound I've observed over decades of teaching. The most dangerous limitations aren't the ones imposed on you by circumstances or other people. They're the ones you've internalized and accepted as truth. The stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. I'm not a math person. I don't have willpower. I'm too old to learn that. I'm not the creative type. These aren't observations. They're prison sentences you've written for yourself. The superior man examines these stories with skeptical eyes, questioning not just whether they're helpful, but whether they're even true. Here's a powerful question that has guided my own journey. Is this limitation real, or have I simply reached the edge of my current capabilities? Most people confuse the two. They mistake the boundary of their present ability for the boundary of their potential. They try something once, struggle, and conclude, "I can't do this," rather than "I can't do this yet." Superior man makes this distinction instinctively. He knows that most perceived limitations are simply skills not yet developed, understandings not yet reached, strengths not yet cultivated. His distress comes not from hitting the boundary, from recognizing it's time to expand it. I want to tell you about a particular kind of limitation that's especially pernicious. The limitation of identity. The stories you tell about who you fundamentally are. These aren't just thoughts, they're the architecture of your reality. When you say, "I'm not a confident person," you're not just describing your current state. You're reinforcing the neural pathways that maintain it. Superior man is cautious about the identities he claims. He doesn't define himself by what he currently cannot do, but by what he's committed to becoming. He doesn't say, "I'm bad at relationships." He says, "I'm developing my capacity for connection." This isn't semantic games. It's the difference between a fixed and a growth-oriented self-concept. Most people approach their limitations with the energy of conflict. They fight against them, struggle with them, battle them as enemies. This creates internal division, a civil war of the self that drains the very energy needed for transformation. The superior man approaches his limitations with the energy of integration. He acknowledges them as aspects of his current reality without rejecting them or being defined by them. He doesn't waste energy fighting what is. He invests it in creating what could be. Your relationship with your limitations sets the tone for your entire growth journey. Make it one of honest acceptance and determined transcendence, not denial or warfare. Let me share something personal that few know. There were skills I struggled with for years, not days, not weeks, but years, before breaking through. Techniques that seemed beyond my capacity, no matter how I approached them. In those long periods of seeming failure, I discovered something crucial. Persistence without progression isn't enough. The superior man doesn't just keep doing the same thing, hoping for different results. He constantly refines his approach. When you hit a limitation that won't yield to your current methods, don't just try harder, try differently. Examine your assumptions, question your approach, seek new perspectives. Your breakthrough might not require more effort. It might require a completely different kind of effort. I've noticed that many people use their awareness of their limitations as a reason to narrow their ambitions rather than expand their capabilities. They say, "I'm not good at public speaking, so I'll avoid roles that require it," instead of, "I'm not good at public speaking yet, so I'll develop that skill." They allow what they cannot currently do to determine what they will attempt to do. The superior man takes the opposite approach. He uses his ambitions to dictate which limitations he must overcome, rather than allowing his limitations to dictate which ambitions he can pursue. What you cannot do today, determine what you will be able to do tomorrow. We live in a culture obsessed with natural talent and instant results. We celebrate the prodigy who can do effortlessly what others struggle to accomplish with years of practice. This creates the dangerous illusion that if something doesn't come easily to you, it's not for you. But here's the truth that transformed my own journey. The capabilities that you develop through struggle, that you forge in the fire of your limitations, will ultimately be more powerful than those that came naturally. The superior man doesn't envy those who find certain paths easier. He values the strength and wisdom he gains from walking a harder road. Your limitations aren't punishments. They're opportunities to develop rare and valuable capabilities. I want to address something I see holding many people back: the fear of looking foolish while working through a limitation. The businessman who won't take a public speaking course because he might appear nervous. The woman who won't join a gym because she might look uncoordinated. The writer who won't share his work because it might be criticized. This fear of appearing imperfect while developing keeps countless people trapped in their limitations. The superior man understands that growth requires a willingness to be temporarily bad at something new, rather than permanently mediocre at something familiar. He values progress over pride, growth over the appearance of competence. Here's a powerful shift in perspective. Your limitations aren't personal deficiencies. They're universal human experiences being expressed through your particular life. Everyone faces limitations. Everyone experiences the gap between what they are and what they could be. Everyone knows the distress of falling short of their own potential. This isn't your unique burden. It's the human condition. The superior man doesn't feel isolated or uniquely flawed because of his limitations. He feels connected to humanity through them. This perspective transforms shame into shared experience and turns distress from a weight that crushes into a force that compels growth. As we near the end of our journey together, I want to leave you with this final truth. The awareness of your limitations, that distress we've been discussing, isn't something to overcome or outgrow. It's something to cultivate and refine throughout your life. The moment you stop feeling distressed by the gap between what you are and what you could be is the moment your growth stops. The superior man doesn't seek to eliminate this divine discontent. He welcomes it as his most faithful guide, his most honest teacher, his most powerful ally in the lifelong journey of becoming. Don't run from this distress, befriend it. It's not your enemy. It's the voice of your highest self, calling you toward your fullest expression. Remember the flower breaking through concrete that I mentioned at the beginning? You are that flower. Your limitations are that concrete. They seem solid, unchangeable, defining, but with persistent, gentle, determined pressure, with roots that reach deep and a will that reaches higher. What seems impenetrable gives way, not all at once, without struggle, but inevitably, undeniably, the life force that you are breaks through what seemed unbreakable. The superior man knows this truth in his bones. No limitation is permanent unless you make it so. No concrete can contain the power of a life determined to express its full potential. Your journey begins now, not with dramatic declarations or impossible promises, but with a simple shift in how you relate to your limitations. See them clearly, feel the distress they cause, and then, this is the crucial part, use that distress not as evidence against yourself, but as energy for your transformation. One day, one choice, one small expansion at a time. The path isn't easy, but it's worth every step. Because on the other side of your limitations isn't just greater capability, it's greater aliveness. It's the difference between existing and truly living, between accepting what is and creating what could be. The superior man is distressed by his lack of ability, not because he needs to be perfect, but because he's committed to being fully alive. Are you?